So it's not like we're running out of silver. It's just it's so heavily used, we can't seem to mine enough to satisfy demand.
The video you're about to watch is all satire. Do not take it seriously at all, you fucks. Welcome everyone to the SilverDegenClub Wall Street Silver live stream. That's not live. This is being pre-recorded. That's right, guys. We have the beautiful illuminated ape hanging out with us today and a special guest, a legend in the silver community and for freedom. We got Patrick Holland. Hello, Patrick Holland. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's fun watching your your avatars.
Thanks, man. Thanks, John. Our illuminated ape. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. It's good to be on a show. It's been too long since I've done one of these, so I'm ready to get my feet back wet in this.
Yes, you are. You are. So, Pat, you are a very influential person in the silver community, the gold freedom. You got so much stuff going on. I just want to make sure, in case someone out there it has not been able to fully track who you are. Who are you, Pat?
Okay.
Freedom Pat.
Well, thank you very much, for that introduction. I don't know if I'm really influential or not. I know I get a lot of attention. But what I guess if you want to talk about what I'm kind of known for in this community, in this space, is actually getting silver and gold legal tender legislation in individual states, not the federal government. I don't care about them. I care about the individual states and them actually getting it done. So that's, I guess, what you would say that I'm known for in this space. But we did have a Discord and Truth, Money, and Freedom podcast, and we were a silver and gold group going back to 2016, maybe. And so you might recognize me from that, from Truth, Money, and Freedom. And early on in Wall Street Silver, I was involved.
Well, that's cool to hear, man. I'm glad that you've been around, let's say, for a while here. What is the most okay? So you got a lot of stuff cooking right now, and every single burner's on, I would say, and then you had to buy another oven just to add more burners to it. So, what is the most recent thing right now that you're working on project wise that is really taking up all your attention, that you're throwing all your weight at right now and want to get people to understand and just know more about?
You bet. And thank you for asking that. And this could be a filibuster here.
That's good.
Silver,
do it.
Yeah, silver and gold legislation. It's right on our website, mofree.org. And this is sponsored by Senator Bill Eigel in the state of Missouri. But it's so well written that, other states borrow this legislation. Literally, if you just go to our website, mofree.org, go to the forums. You don't even have to sign up, if you just want to read the forums, download the PDF. And right there is the template, the model, the legislation we're using in the state of Missouri to get silver and gold legislation done. And also start paving the way for a mint in the state of Missouri, for a depository of sorts in the state of Missouri. Because one thing that separates me from many people in the space, and by the way, it's a good separation, it's not a bad separation, is that I think of silver and gold as money, whereas a lot of my friends in the space think of it as a way to make money. The reason, we differ in that regard is because silver and gold is what's going to give us, if you will, a lifeboat from what the federal government has planned for all of us, which is the digital dollar, social credit scoring, digital wallets, digital IDs, facial recognition, tyranny. Gold and silver can actually help us with that. Give everyone another option. And that's probably the most important aspect of getting gold and silver legal tender legislation done in your states. This goes far beyond simply holding on to gold and silver, hoping you're going to make a profit while they're inflating the dollar. You're not making a profit when they're inflating the dollar if it's simply going up with inflation. I understand the hope is at some point the government's manipulation of gold and silver will stop. I got news for you, gang. As long as we have the Federal Reserve note, the manipulation will not stop. And it's hardcore manipulation, particularly on silver. Gold has not been attacked quite as fervently as silver has been, but there's a reason for it. Silver is an absolute critical metal for our society, for our civilization as we know it right now. I often say when I'm invited onto people's podcasts that if we woke up tomorrow and all the gold in the world was gone, it was just suddenly gone. It's all gone. Our lives wouldn't really change that much because even in its industrial use, gold can be replaced by other metals. With silver, if we wake up tomorrow morning and all the silver in the world is gone, we go back to probably the 1860s, 1870s, and that becomes our civilization because it's so instrumental in electronics and water filtration, pharmaceuticals. I mean, the list goes on and on. You guys know the stats. The most useful commodity on the planet is oil. Right after it is silver. And that's just a fact. So silver is, some people would say silver is so necessary to society and so critical that it cannot be used as money. Well, I submit to you that silver has 5,000 years of recorded history as use of money, and it can be so again, but not at today's prices.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Pat. It's very recently, I would say, that I've been more inclined to believe that the military-industrial complex is the main player in silver manipulation. And it was the other day that I was going through some documentation back from like the 60s from, I think it was Department of Energy or Department of Defense. And they were already talking about silver shortages all the way back in the 60s. It was affecting the military. And there was an aspect of this report that suggests to me that the reason why we took silver out of circulation of money all the way back when was because they needed it for the industrial aspects of it. What is your thoughts on that? Do you have a different theory of why we don't have silver in circulation anymore as money?
No, that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I can expand on what you said, but what you said is 100% correct. The fact that silver is so critical, and I can explain why. It has to do with the flow of electrons. There's virtually no resistance in silver, and it's the only metal on the planet that has virtually no resistance for passing electrons. In fact, the resistance is so small that electrons can actually flow through all the molecules of silver. That is not true with copper. And copper is what most people associate with passing electrons. After all, that's what's in all the wiring in your house, right?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that copper has enough resistance in it that electrons have to flow on the outside of copper. It can't flow through the inside. So the reason why you will see, especially if you've ever been in construction, you'll see different size copper, basically from, little teeny tiny strands of copper making up what we call Ethernet cable or Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 7 cable, to the big things of copper, for bringing power into a house, for two-phase power and even three-phase into businesses. And the reason they have to make the copper so big is because the outside diameter of the copper is what the electrons travel on. So they need more volume of space for electrons to flow through. That's simply not true with silver. You can accomplish the same thing with silver with its entire diameter, not just the circumference. This is a very important aspect of silver because there's no resistance. Silver does not heat up when electrons flow through it. That's not true with copper. Copper actually heats up. Aluminum heats up even more. So why is it that, it's so critical for industry to have a metal where there's no heat? Well, that means you don't have to cool it, right? You don't have to have passive cooling, active cooling. And so if silver were more abundant, It would be the perfect thing to use for all electrical wiring in your house. For the lines, the transmission lines that are going down the road to deliver electrical power, it would be the perfect thing to carry it because you could do it with a much smaller wire. So that's the purpose. Your cell phone, the circuitry in your cell phone, basically is silver. They don't use copper, for all the circuitry in your cell phone, because then they would have to cool it. They'd have to have some kind of passive or active cooling. In television, same thing. If you are, if you're using copper for all your circuitry, you're going to have to cool down that printed circuit board. So this is why when you look at a printed circuit board, it always is silver circuits. People can see that even through the epoxy. You can see it's silver, and it's very small amounts of silver, believe it or not. But it's because it doesn't have resistance for the flow of electrons. Therefore, it doesn't heat up.
Another aspect of why they use silver in the military is its anti-corrosion. Now,
Yep.
Copper, if it oxidizes, it corrodes really quickly. And
Well,
that's
silver can too. Silver
Yes.
can corrode as well. So I do believe that's probably why they use epoxy on printed circuit boards, is to help prevent that corrosion.
I believe so as well.
So, for instance, a Silver Eagle. If you have a Silver Eagle, and I love Silver Eagles, by the way.
They're the best.
And if you have one of those and you just have it sitting on a desk, it will discolor over time. And that's actually oxidation. Now, corrosion is not a good way to put it. It's oxidation, maybe, of the metal itself. And so basically it's just getting some impurities on the surface of it, which just colors it. And I've seen silver actually look almost black with impurities.
Oh, wow.
And so at any rate, and that's the outside of it. Of course, you can wash it off and get that brilliant sheen on your coin again. You can do that.
I think you put some salt or baking soda with some tin foil and a pod, and do some magic in the kitchen.
Sure, there you go. But that's how critical silver is. And by the way, I've just been talking about the passing of electrons. We haven't got into, the antiviral, antibacterial capabilities of silver, which a lot of other metals have. Gold has that. Even copper has that property, but not as good as silver has. But remember now, gold and copper can also pass electrons, not as efficiently as silver. The same thing is true of killing bacteria and viruses. Silver's just more efficient at doing that. And we could talk about pharmaceuticals. We could talk about, for instance, burn creams. I don't know if you guys have ever known someone who's gotten a 3rd-degree burn before, but if they go to the hospital, they're going to get a jar of what's called SilverDegen.
Yes, actually, we had, what was it? GG Bullion had a smelting little accident. Hurt himself.
That was crazy. Yeah, they use that.
And he came back with some silver cream, and he was pretty amazed at how efficiently it worked.
That's right, because it kills bacteria and viruses. When you get a 3rd-degree burn, you're losing that first line of defense, your skin, to prevent viruses and bacteria from easily getting into your tissues and into your blood. That's why they use SilverDegen, because silver is more efficient at doing it than anything else. There's no Golvadine or Copperadine. It's all SilverDegen.
Yeah, even when I was doing when we would do our hazmat training or basically just like your yearly training in the military and stuff, they would have those burn kits that you could get, and they would be part of everyone's training kit. Everyone would have a play one, but they would call it, but it was actually a real one. It would be a burn kit, and it was filled with silver.
That's right. And the uses of silver go far beyond that. A lot of people just think, well, mirrors, they use silver in mirrors, and they do. But that's just one of many thousands of uses for silver. So because the industrial qualities of silver exist to the quantity and quality that they do, and not easily replicatable, I might add. In fact, if you want to replicate silver in industry, there's something called graphene that's very expensive to make, but it shares the same qualities of passing of electrons. It's a carbon composite is actually what it is. And so the last I looked into this, guys, and I could be outdated. I could be. but I think it was $4,000 an ounce to make graphene.
To make graphene?
Yep.
Oh, it's crazy.
So in other words, silver itself is, what is it? $24 an ounce right now, according to spot price. But the spot price on graphene is about 4,000.
God, yeah, they're not gonna do that.
That's right. But it does give you potential.
There's so much silver though, Pat. It's
No,
everywhere. There's so
no.
much. Isn't that what we keep hearing every day?
It is
so
but
much.
I know. It's disingenuous for them to say this, and I can say this not necessarily with authority, but I can say it with 99.9% certainty that there is significantly less silver available above ground than there is gold. Now, gold we recognize as being more valuable, right? Because the price is so high, right? There is so much gold above ground because it's not used in industry to anywhere near the level silver is.
And it's a lot easier to get out of the ground, or you can just get it out of a river.
Yeah, silver is not as easy to get as gold in some instances. That's correct. However, the big thing is that gold just isn't used in industry anything like silver is, so it's not used up. It's not being taken up. Like if you took all the cell phones in the world and recycled them, there's quite a bit of silver there. You took all the televisions in the world and recycled them and got all the silver out. There's a lot of silver there. But you see, the silver is used up. And in many cases, it's thrown away, like in water filtration. So that's not something that's easily recoverable in water filters. That's a difficult way to recover silver, actually. So some silver ends up in the landfill. And yes, it can be recovered, I imagine, but silver's going to have to go up in price to recover silver from water filters. It's just not worth it to do right now. With printed circuit boards, even, I think it's, oh boy, I can't remember who put out a report on this. It might have been David Morgan on the current average cost of recovering silver from electronics and other things. And that's why we send all this stuff to China, because it's significantly less expensive to do this in China than it is the United States. But now even in China, it's over spot price to recover silver. So it's not like we're running out of silver. It's just, it's so heavily used, we can't seem to mine enough to satisfy demand. And this is the problem they have with keeping the spot price down. Eventually, and I can remember, I think it was in 2015. I remember silver was just unattainable. It was unobtainium for about 3 months. I could get 100-ounce bars, but I couldn't get ounce coins. And I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh yeah.
But they put one heck of a heavy premium on Silver Eagles. We'd never seen it before. It was an $8 premium. That's nothing compared to what we're seeing, post-COVID. But back then, that was, geez, what are you guys doing? Well, that's because you couldn't get them. You absolutely couldn't get them. So they put a high price on it. That's what we call supply and demand. So silver is difficult to get now. It's harder to get even at your local coin store. And, particularly if you're picky with, the coins or bars that you want to get, it's very difficult to get. And yet the price doesn't match that. So yes, I know that they're saying there's plenty of silver and there's way more of it. But I will tell you, folks like David Morgan will probably tell you the ratio of how it's coming out of the ground now is not 15 to 1. It's closer to 8 to 1. For every ounce of gold they get about 8 ounces of silver, because the easiest to get silver has been gotten. They're having to go to the harder to get silver now. And a lot of that is having to do with high grading and low grading certain mines. And some mines in South America have been shut off permanently because of ecological issues. And I believe that was low grading the mines, which involves a lot of chemicals, by the way, where high grading does not involve as many chemicals, particularly at the mining site, where low grading does. And I don't want to get into all the technicals of that, but because I'm not an expert in that. But the fact is, when you low grade a mine, it costs more to get that silver out than when you're high grading. High grading is the cheap, easy, quick way to get out silver. But once a mine has been high graded, to the point where there's nothing left to get. You have to low grade that mine to get the small flecks of silver as opposed to the nuggets of silver.
Yep, and another aspect of this is I was reading, at least in the byproduct mines, like Nevada, they have a very high concentration of mercury.
Mhm.
So when they're going in to get the silver, it's become more of a hazard now. They're taking a lot of mercury along with the silver, and they have nowhere to use this stuff. So it's just being stored like nuclear waste.
I wasn't aware of that, but that's an interesting aspect of it. I think you're right on that, because wasn't there something to do with Colorado with the EPA releasing a bunch of arsenic into actually a river that ended up in polluting that river to the point where you can't fish in it anymore?
I hadn't heard about that, but it doesn't surprise me. The EPA does the opposite of what they're charged to do.
Well, that's the thing is, the EPA fines me if I pollute, but who fines the EPA when they pollute?
No one. There's no oversight, unfortunately, in the government.
Yep, that's right. And they destroyed a river. They actually they destroyed a river where you can't eat, fish out of it anymore. Once you can't eat the fish out of a lake or a river, it's
useless.
Yeah.
It's completely.
Well, that's not dissimilar to what happened for that earlier this year or last year with the Ohio disaster. That whole area is now just completely borked. Even the Amish are moving out of there because they can't even trust the soil for their crops.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the Amish start moving, it's bad.
Yep. No, that's a good point too. And the Amish don't use a lot of stuff that has silver. So, and so yeah, they're definitely affected by when things like this happen, for sure. And so the aspect that you guys bring up about the silver to gold ratio above ground is fascinating, and it's the cause of a lot of debate. But we do know that we're not mining enough for demand. So they're relying very heavily on recycling silver, and they have to nudge the price up to make it worthwhile to recover silver using Chinese labor. And so, go ahead.
Oh no, so I've heard about different companies constantly. I guess maybe they are all in China then that are doing it, because that's the only place where they can get away with, getting away with the labor cost and stuff to recycle it. But
basically slave labor at that point.
Yeah. But I always bring this up because I just see it as a future thing. Maybe like in the next 5 or 10 years and stuff, that we're going to start seeing kiosks out throughout the malls and throughout, maybe little like cash for gold type spots, but they're going to be silver for cash spots.
Maybe, but we still have that chance where we get into an issue where there's so much of a shortage that the military can't make the bombs. And at that point, it becomes a national security issue that they're just going to confiscate it.
It could be. Once again, if it comes to confiscation of gold and silver, that'd be very difficult to achieve at this point. Back in, you have to remember now, the American culture, and I know this from talking with my grandparents who are no longer with me, but just civilization and the culture of the United States was so very different in the 30s as opposed to today. People were much more, quote unquote, patriotic and trusting of their government. And when, FDR went ahead and confiscated gold, said, bring it to the bank, we'll give you a $20 bill for that ounce of gold that you have lying around the house, people were much more likely to do it. I don't think in today's culture, in today's society, that would happen with gold or silver.
It wasn't an ass, though, back then. It did come with a fine if you didn't do it.
Correct.
But that was a huge, huge fine that if someone, actually hit that, it would probably ruin their life.
You're right. But it was not done legally. It was done through an executive action as opposed to through Congress. So technically, it wasn't legal. You didn't technically have to follow. Yes, I'm sure that some people would love to report you if you had a stash of gold at your house, so they can get a reward. But the fact is, it wasn't done legally. And people were patriotic enough at that time to just follow what the government said. And I think the culture has changed now. I don't think people trust the government anymore. In fact, back then you would think that people thought, well, the government is telling the truth about 95% of the time. Now it's the government tells the truth about 5% of the time. So I mean, the pendulum has swung in a different direction, and I don't think it's favorable for confiscation at all. I mean, and I don't think they even have the ability to do a police state the way the people think they can.
I think they're gonna go the laziest way possible, which is probably gonna be the most effective way. They're just gonna tax the fuck out of it. So
Yep,
if you
there you
make
go.
any kind of sale, anything, they're 50%, 70%, like that's how they're gonna make people get rid of it, essentially.
That's what
Or
they did to crypto.
yeah, and then they're gonna be like, oh, but okay, you could do all the transactions you want with silver, local store, whatever. It's all fine if you're gonna do that. But if you take it to the bank, we're going to give you a 20% premium on it.
Yep.
That's how they're going to get everyone to throw all their silver into the banks and give it to the government. At least that's what I would think they would do.
Yep. And at the same time, print up worthless currency to give you in exchange for that silver. So keep that in mind too, folks. So if this does come down the pike, and by the way, I agree with you, that is the most likely way they can, quote unquote, confiscate silver and gold, is by offering you more worthless fiat for it. And so you should measure your wealth in ounces, not in dollars. The dollar is finished. I mean, we could bring up the U.S. debt clock and show people we have $33.7 trillion worth of debt. This is not reasonable to assume we can pay off. In fact, even if we resolve to keep the dollar and pay off this debt, it would take several generations to make it happen. This is not a realistic. In fact, you guys probably, in fact, I'm going to talk about the federal government a little bit, even though I don't focus on the federal government, because it is my opinion that the U.S. government is going the way of the dodo, just the way the dollar is. It's going to be replaced with something much more totalitarian, and that transition is happening right now before our eyes. We just don't recognize it because we're in the process. We can't see it from beginning to end, through the eyes of history, looking through a textbook or something like that. We're in the process of converting over to something that's much more akin to communism than a constitutional republic. But it's directly tied to the dollar, the failure of the dollar. And the worse we are in our, economy in the United States, and indeed, the debt levels that we have with the U.S. government, the worse we can expect our government to become, the more totalitarian we can expect them to become. They're directly linked. And you could see the same thing through the eyes of history with all other civilizations that held the world reserve currency. Basically, the same thing happened. Who had it before us? Well, that was Britain. And Britain's a socialist place now, very heavily socialist. So look at Rome. When Rome fell, they were, putting in more copper in with their silver and gold. You guys know this story.
Yep.
So they were devaluing their currency too, and their currency was gold and silver coins.
With each new emperor became, just more devaluation of the currency.
That's correct. And it was a way to siphon off the wealth from the people, a hidden tax, inflation. And the same thing is going on here, but, basically it's going on with the dollar. Now, this is one thing I like to talk to people about, which is nominal confusion. Have you guys heard that term before?
I'm confused.
No.
You're confused. Okay. Nominally, I imagine.
Yes.
Okay. If I were to hold up a $100 bill and show that to you and ask you how much that's worth, what would you say?
It is worth the material it's printed on.
Well, yeah, that's because you're educated. A lot of people would say that's $100. And I'd say, okay. So I'd throw something else up. I'd throw up my cell phone. Say, how much is that worth? Well, it depends on the model and, the make and hold. No, just general terms. What is it worth? About $400. That's interesting. You compared the $100 bill to dollars, and now you're comparing my cell phone to dollars. So the dollar is being compared to itself. That's nominal confusion. Here's how it works. And you were all brainwashed, by the way. The reason why we're brainwashed is because that $100 bill is worth $100 in 1920, and it's worth $100 today. Compare it to another asset. You're going to find out very quickly that $100 from 1913 to today is worth about $3 now. But you don't have that frame of reference because you're not comparing it to another asset. How much could $100 buy you in 1913? How much can $100 buy you today? Stuff, things. So how much oil? How much gold? $20 would get you an ounce of gold back in 1913, right?
Right. So what are you saying? We probably need something to break that confusion, since the dollar is no longer something that is equitably pegged to something. Should we come out with maybe like a $1 or $1 equals three goats?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So now you get it. That's how you break the nominal confusion. You have to start comparing the dollar to other assets all the time. So when you look at a $100 bill and you say, how much is it worth? I would love someone to say 4 ounces of silver, because that actually is more meaningful to me. That actually means that's exactly what that $100 bill is actually worth, is 4 ounces of 999 silver.
Well, that's debatable, since we've been going through inflation for the last several years, and silver has not pegged to that inflation.
It is not. You're correct, but I'm talking about breaking the nominal confusion, the value of silver notwithstanding, and so I could have used another asset, basically such as oil, because oil's been tracking with inflation quite well.
Well, when I think about the normies too, I mean, we just look. What's the most standard metric that's been used? I don't know how long it's been used, but the Big Mac indicator. So we go off that.
That's recent. That's recent. Yeah. McDonald's recently came out with these coins that if they screw up your order, they'll give you a coin for a free Big Mac, and now that coin is essentially worth more than U.S. currency, and it's debatably.
Well, definitely. But like if you look at the price, I think they've tracked this for a while, but it's just tracking the price of the Big Mac. So how many Big Macs are you able to buy today when with $100 compared to in whenever McDonald's came around? And we look at the prices. I think they were quoting $18 now a meal.
A Big Mac in the 1960s was 45 cents.
Okay, so now it's 18. So it's how many? So you just divide that. So you could have bought a little over 200 Big Macs back then with $100, but you could buy 5.
Yep.
Now.
See, there you go. That's breaking the nominal confusion. You guys, that's an important thing we need to get across to the masses. And this is partly, basically what we have to do with gold and silver legislation. We need to break people of the nominal confusion so they can understand that they are getting truly, let's see, this is family friendly, right? That they're really getting in trouble here, holding on to dollar denominated assets. So dollars, even stocks. I mean, I hate to say this, but the stock market has gone up somewhat with inflation, but it's certainly not since COVID. Not since COVID, but inflation in general, the stock market kind of keeps up. But if you were holding stocks, a lot of money in stocks before COVID hit, and you're holding on to the same stocks now, chances are you're down quite a bit in nominal terms, quite a bit. If you're saving money in the bank since COVID, holy mackerel, bring some Vaseline to that party, please.
Well, there's only a handful of big companies that are effectively propping up the stock market these days.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's obfuscating how terrible the situation really is.
Well, it also gets into something else, and that's malinvestment. And by the way, you just brought up Illuminated Ape. Thank you. You just brought a great new topic we can talk about, and that's basically malinvestment and how you can go into a deflationary period of a recession and clear out that malinvestment. But the Federal Reserve, no. We're not going into recession. We're going to keep this system going. We're going to run the tires off this car. We're going to run the wheels off, right? Mm-hmm. But we need recession to clear out malinvestment. And those companies you're talking about, particularly in the Dow, are really case in point that the fact that they're not allowing recessions or the reduction or elimination of malinvestment to actually heal parts of the economy. We are in the end game because of this. And the direct example and evidence is what you stated, the 5 or so, maybe 6 companies in the Dow that are propping everything up.
Yeah, the Magnificent Seven, the
Yeah,
beautiful.
7.
They're beautiful, but it creates. We always talk about doom loops, or a lot of people talk about doom loops, but it kind of forces all these hedge funds and everyone else to they're just following everyone else. There's only 7 spots now that you can invest in, so it makes everyone do that until they get rug pulled, and then they're all fucked.
Well, I think this rug pull is by design now. If we look at 2008, what was the company that was charged with helping the Federal Reserve kind of navigate this treacherous waters? It was BlackRock.
Mm-hmm.
So they were the ones that basically were instrumental in what we got right now, because they controlled, or I would say manipulated, the market to allow it to continue, only for it to be in this place where they can actually, what's the old homage, never let a good crisis go to waste. They've created the crisis. Now they're not going to let it go to waste.
Yeah. And we could, actually take that to its logical conclusion, because BlackRock has taken over, basically manipulating the spot price of gold and silver now, from JP Morgan and others, in the past. But the fact is they've moved into real estate as well. And if you look at it, it's in the West that this is a problem. BlackRock is buying up residential real estate as well as commercial at a rate that no one would even believe if we reported on. And in Europe, you have a company called Vanguard doing the same thing.
Yep. And both these companies are pretty much giving people above their ask price. So they're cornering the market.
Correct.
And taking away all this available real estate, which is driving up the prices of rent or getting a mortgage. And of course, interest rates are crazy right now. I wouldn't even want to refinance.
No, and what it's done, and I'm sorry to tell you guys, but Generation Z, they have no hope to have anything near what the millennials had.
Oh, I think they know that. That's why they're completely apathetic to the whole situation.
Well, yes, but for them to shift their thinking into something that's much more communist is not a good idea either. But that's a failure of the public education system, I think, because there are solutions, and the free market is a great solution for this. Free markets are not allowed to exist. There's mechanisms to actually prevent them from existing properly, and we could talk about that as well. But the millennials will never have it as well as my generation, Generation X. And Generation X will never have it as good as the baby boomers had it, because the opportunities are what's going away. There's money there. Money's all over the place. It's just not very obvious on how to get your hands on it at this point. But when you have companies like BlackRock and Vanguard that actually are agents of the government getting, quote unquote, loans at discounted rates and buying up people's real estate, setting the price of gold and silver, they're probably moving into other areas as well. But real estate's a big one, because you're going to own nothing and be happy, right? Meme sugar daddy?
Always gonna be.
Yep.
I almost know I'm so close to owning nothing right now, Pat, and I feel happier every time I get closer. So I just got to get rid of maybe my shoes, and I think I'll own nothing and be completely happy. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I would say in my early teens, I remember watching on the TV, there was this infomercial guy, Matthew Lesko. He had this book of all these government grants and whatnot. I think there's a correlation between that guy no longer being on TV and just not a lot of available money for the general population. What do you think?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I haven't thought about Lesko in years. But he did promote a book on TV. It was the beginning of the infomercial age, and it was about getting government grants. The ease of which you can get government grants, how to find them in the first place. And so I think corporations picked up on that.
Yeah.
And basically cornered the market, if you will. But at the same time, for government to collect taxes from people only to give it, away to other people doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you're thinking about, basically the government creating opportunity for free markets. Now, that in itself is an oxymoron, because the government doesn't create free markets. What it did is it provided opportunities for ideas. And so, but it did it in the wrong way. LASCO was, kind of at the end of that. Basically everyone can do this. You can apply for a government grant, get a bunch of money, and, start working your idea. Now you have to go get a loan from a bank because the banks have swallowed up all that grant money, or people associated with the grant. So, not that I'm saying I'm not condoning, and I'm certainly not saying that that's what I personally think is the best thing to do, but corporations run this place now. Now, it doesn't matter what generation you're in. It doesn't matter what news network you watch or what websites you go to. This is a common reality for all of us. Corporations run the United States government. And there's an ideology mixed in with that too. For those who think that we foolishly, unfortunately, think that we have a constitutional republic, I love it when people say we have a democracy. We have a democracy.
No, that's the narrative push.
It is. And it's fundamentally incorrect. However, I have looked up in the Webster Dictionary. They would be correct because they've changed the meaning of the word democracy.
That's where you got to find an old dictionary.
Yep, find an old dictionary, and it was very specific in its meaning. But what we live in, what we were supposed to live in, what the founding fathers gave us was a constitutional republic. I submit to you today that we live in a hybrid right now between fascism and socialism. That's what we have.
You would say we're more of a corporatocracy or a technocracy, whatever that word.
Yeah, technocracy.
That's it.
And I agree with you. And I'm using the old definition of fascism, not the new one. The old definition of fascism is when corporations and government, join hands together, join forces, and join resources to do something mutually beneficial to the government and the corporation against the will and against the benefit of the people. That's what fascism originally meant. Sometime in the 1970s, the definition was somewhat changed to what we call totalitarianism. And so there's a lot of isms out there: socialism, communism, feudalism. But I bring up feudalism because I want to say, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. That's feudalism. It's a form of communism. So it's not direct communism, just like we don't have a direct democracy except for voting and ballot initiatives. That's it. A ballot initiative is something that you'll have on your ballot that says, should we raise taxes for your local school district? Should we change the constitution in our state to, make abortion legal? That's a ballot initiative. And everyone knows what voting is, so I don't need to bring that up. Those are the only two aspects of our culture that we can call a democracy. Everything else is something else. So let's bring that back to gold and silver here real quick. So we're to believe that the free market determines the spot price because the buying and selling of futures contracts, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what we're told? Okay.
Roughly.
What they don't tell you is who is buying and selling those futures contracts. That's what they forget to tell you every time. This is the fascism. It's banks.
Banks are buying. People that need to hedge it.
And people that need to hedge as well, but nowhere near the volume we're seeing with banks and hedge funds. So the buying and selling of silver, or the conversion from ounces to dollars, is what sets the spot price. And so that can be manipulated because it's done through the futures market. So I know people will disagree with me, and you're welcome to do so, but I'm going to talk about the premium real quick, because I know the premium can be manipulated as well to a certain extent. But the premium that we all pay on gold and silver when we go to our local coin store, and they see our smiling face there after we get a paycheck and we want to get a few ounces of silver for the week, that premium is supposed to be reflective of supply and demand on top of spot, because spot is based on futures, and futures market is, 400 ounces to one, paper ounces to physical in the COMEX, something like that. They say it's 225. It is not 225. It is significantly higher. That leverage is very, very dangerous. If you guys remember the housing market crisis of 2008, very interesting time to be alive, by the way, especially if you understood what was going on. The leverage for mortgages to literally all the derivative products they created off the mortgage-backed security was 50 to 1. 50 to 1 almost took out the entire world economy. just right here in the United
Yep.
States.
It's like 50 strippers or 50 houses to
That's
one
correct.
stripper.
Yep. But what if I told you silver is just one product that carries derivatives? Because we could go through thousands and thousands of commodities and products that have derivatives. But what if silver is 200 to 1? You know, what was that make it a $5 trillion market? Something like that.
Is there even a way to track every, like, is I guess what I'm asking, is there hidden derivatives that we don't even know about technically?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just making sure.
No, that's an interesting question. And the reason I want to, expand on what you just said is because I hear stratospheric nosebleed section numbers on how much derivatives are worth right now. Have you guys heard that, $3-4 quadrillion?
Yeah, I've heard that a few times, and I'm like, well, someone knows, someone's able to see those real numbers and where these are coming from. So, like, how much is that the tip of the iceberg? It could be.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, but quadrillion. I mean, there is not enough currency on the planet to cover this. This is their value, right? This is their assigned values. And with those assigned values, people can take loans against those derivatives. And we do it through the repo market. Now, the repo market's supposed to be for bonds, right? Isn't that what they keep telling us? What if banks were trading back and forth with the Federal Reserve with some of these worthless derivatives?
I mean, it makes sense to me because you have to proc up the market. They're going to have to take the, when we did this short squeeze, our silver squeeze in 2021, that really put pressure on these people, and they had to react. And ever since then, it just seems like we're on a tightrope situation.
Yeah. And you always will be from this point forward with the silver market. Manipulating gold, like I said, is not something they're interested in doing because too many rich people hold gold. The last thing politicians want to do, and this is another thing too. I mean, because I've never been on your show before, and thank you again for having me, by the way, guys. This is great.
Of course.
Is the manipulation of gold doesn't make sense because rich people hold gold, right? And let's talk about the lineage of the manipulation. Okay, because we know it's in the COMEX, right? The commodity index. The commodity index
hasn't been around forever, so there was a mechanism prior to the COMEX that kept things in check as well.
Yes, that's correct. But now it's the COMEX to the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is basically you might want to call it kind of like a commodity warehouse. But you go from that, you go directly to the Treasury. That's under the executive branch.
So is this basement trading going on at the Treasury with the CME group?
I don't know. I'm throwing stuff out and basically let your imagination go away with you, because the president of the United States is in charge of the Treasury, right?
Right.
Because it's an executive level position. It's a cabinet of the executive branch. And so you can trace the lineage all the way to the CME. And remember, JP Morgan was announced as an agent of the federal government back in 2012, even though they took over the COMEX and the futures market for silver in 2008 with the disbanding and reallocation of Bear Stearns into JP Morgan. Bear Stearns did it before JP Morgan. JP Morgan had it forever. They kept getting caught. They kept getting sued. And now it's BlackRock, which is a company that has never been sued for anything. They just
you don't want to touch that company.
Yep, that's right. So it makes perfect sense to give it to BlackRock then, right?
And BlackRock is owned by Vanguard, who is a board of mystery people.
Yes, that's right. So there we go. Actually, you already knew it. I was going to get there with that. But that's my point. Literally, the manipulation of silver is so critical that they have set up an infrastructure, a construct with you of people that literally cannot be sued. And that's where we're at now with silver. So that's why I tell people all the time, don't think, basically we're going to get out of this manipulation easily, even with the squeeze.
No, I think the squeeze did more for awareness
Yes, it
of the
did.
situation than actually affecting change for the situation. Now,
Yes.
however, this is a starting ground. I think we're still a movement, and I think we're still doing good for the awareness of what's going on. It's only a matter of time before there's a tipping point where enough people know.
Yeah, we need to keep spreading the awareness through whatever means possible. No matter how degenerate or or silly, whatever it means, as long as people are getting their eyes on silver or just understanding the situation in general, then we could be the stewards that are there that they come to for the correct information on how to proceed going forward when everything's falling apart, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And the more chaotic it is, the less likely the AIs are going to be able to precognitionally figure out what we're planning and stop us.
Yeah.
Whatever the DoD has tools for looking into the future, looking at all the available data to see if they can figure out a way to stop it. We have to be one step ahead of that by making it so we're just confusing.
Sure. And I get that, and I'm good with it. But I'll remind everyone that silver is real money. And it has been for 5,000 years. Whether or not your government tells you it's real money or not is totally irrelevant. What matters is if your state will take gold and silver in the form of payment of taxes.
Now, will they, Pat?
That's what gold and silver legislation is all about. That's part of it.
Now, are you focusing on? Now, I've talked to people from the Citizen Sound Money lobbying group, and they're pushing for the digitalization of gold and silver. Are you doing that route, or are you trying to go a different route because you fear for the digital dollar, if you will?
Okay, and that's a very good question. The free market, and I'm a free market guy, so keep that in mind too. The digitalization of gold and silver has already been accomplished by the bullion banks. So they don't fractionally reserve either. So you either have it or you don't. It's a pretty simple process. You deposit money, if you will, federal reserve notes into your account with gold money or UPMA. I mean, pick a bullion bank, right? So you deposit Federal Reserve notes. They convert it into gold and silver. They give you an ATM card, and you can go spend. You can pay your bills. You can spend. Basically it's all there. So there's the digital, I can't speak, I'm legally stupid, digitizing gold and silver. It's right there. But also too, gold backs, I know that's trademarked, but gold foil laminated, those are really cool, man. It's like using cash.
They're cool, but they're not cost effective yet.
Well, actually, I think that's being dealt with. And I'm not going to say any more than that at this time.
Oh man, yeah, I actually do got a $100 bill that's a 1 gram gold. That's just chilling, but it's really cool.
Yep. So I think that there's going to be competition to Alpine at some point in the near future, and that's you talk about cost effective. So I think that was the main issue.
That was from my studying on it.
Yep, understood, and I agree with you. The premiums on these were too high because the premiums were not being reflected in, for instance, businesses in Wyoming that were accepting the goldbacks were still going, through a spot price. So that was a problem. So you were purchasing it for much more than it was actually worth to be spent, but they were made to be spent. They're not made to collect. I mean, this is, and I don't know if you guys know this, 30% of Wyoming businesses accept goldbacks.
That's pretty great, actually. I didn't know that.
Yep.
I didn't know that either. That's crazy. That's really cool.
So, and Wyoming is a sparsely populated state, so I don't want you to get the impression millions of businesses, are taking goldbacks, but 30% of businesses in Wyoming current, and this article I read, I think in February or March, are actually accepting goldbacks and actually give goldbacks as change as well. And we're talking retail establishments here, restaurants, hardware stores. So it is a way to transact. If you need to do transactions with, your favorite vendor on eBay, the bullion banks have you covered, basically with your bullion account and your ATM card. And then, of course, you can always do, gold and silver coin, basically, and make sure that your state accepts gold and silver for the payment of taxes as well. That's how you get something as legal tender. That's how you get businesses interested. Businesses aren't really interested unless the state's interested. And if the state wants to have a depository, that's even more interesting. So
what would you say, like, the next, if you had a crystal ball, what would you say would be the next state that's gonna try to get this done?
Well, we're trying to get it done in Missouri, but we were stopped by one man, and that's the Speaker of the House in Missouri. His name is Dean Plocher. He single-handedly shut it down because his corporatist bills were not being allowed through the Senate in the Missouri. Well, I'm talking Missouri legislature here. This is not DC stuff. So he stopped it because he wanted a bill to legalize sports betting in Missouri.
Oh, this guy looks like a douchebag.
Yep. And so because the Senate said, no, grassroots constitutional bills, that's what we want. He's like, no, I want my corporatist bills through because all my corporatist buddies that are putting money in my PAC and putting it in my campaign want me to get this done.
Couldn't he have done both?
No. Senator Eigel's not that kind of guy. Basically, Senator Eigel shut down the Missouri Senate over this. So the last, week of legislative season in the state of Missouri, nothing happened because they were at an impasse. What state? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm no doctor, but looking at pictures of Plocher, it seems to me that he has fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah. So you've actually looked up Dean Plocher already.
I had to. I have this.
Okay, understood.
Curiosity.
Yeah. And if Dean Plocher ends up watching this, he meant that you look like someone with fetal alcohol syndrome. He meant it in the most positive way humanly possible.
Yeah, that's a compliment. And,
yeah.
It just means that his mother was a hardworking woman, and she just needed, a little bit of libations every once in a while, and that it turned him into a Speaker of the House. What do you know?
Yeah.
So all women should drink during pregnancy so they can have children that are Speaker of the House.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. So Dean stopped it in Missouri, but keep in mind, if you guys didn't know this, 23 states were running some form of gold and silver bill in 2023. It's easy to remember. 2023, 23 states. It's a big issue. And a lot of people understand the importance of it, especially when you're talking inflation and the threat of a digital dollar, right? So there's that many states that are interested. While everyone's focused on that circus in DC over there, and believe me, a lot of people are totally focused on that. They don't even know what's going on in their state. Their state was most likely running some sort of gold and silver bill, whether it be to get rid of sales taxes on gold and silver, which is a very, very important first move if you're going for legal tender. States like Tennessee actually got a depository in 2023. Legislatively, they got it done. Let's see, Mississippi got rid of sales tax on gold and silver. In Arkansas, our neighbor to the south, as I'm in Missouri here, actually got legal tender and elimination of capital gains tax on gold and silver in the state.
Ooh, that's good.
So stuff is happening. And I realized that it's a different story than what Wall Street Silver mainly talks about with gold and silver. But it's another aspect to the story that is critical to avoiding the tyranny that is coming down the line with the digital dollar. It's critical. You have to have another option. And I realized we could all exchange Tide Pods, and say that that's money, that's currency. I realize that. I get that. But gold and silver have 5,000 years of history. So, and it's in the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. It's right there. Gold and silver coin.
I would even go a step further and if we can get silver back as money, that takes a huge amount of silver away from military application. And there could actually be more peace in this world as a result. Or
they could print up a lot of dollars and actually go to graphene in use of weaponry.
Oh man.
I'm sorry I had to throw that.
They're
point
really
out.
good at printing money, so I'm all for that idea as long as they're staying away from silver. Which hell, I was even doing some research over the weekend about battery manufacturers and whatnot, and maybe how they're getting their silver not directly from the open market. And what I found is hints that they're going straight to the mines themselves and getting the silver out of the ground. And this may not even be factored into the market. So there's a lot of concern there. Have a shortage, and maybe they don't even want to have it seen in the market right now until whatever goes, maybe the digital dollar, whatnot. Then at that point, it doesn't matter. But at this point, I think more awareness needs to be put to the actual source of the silver and to take a look and see where all these industries are getting it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for those naysayers out there who say that this is an artificial shortage, I disagree. You have a few of I believe it's Argentina, maybe, or Bolivia or something like that are shutting down silver mines because of the ecological.